So the transferable skills, everybody tries to put them on a resume, not quite sure they know what they are. So that was why I wanted to be sure that to talk about this. We've got the same 3 goals every time that we do a session for Mind the Gap. We plan to provide information for you that's going to help you with your career, your professional development. We want to have answers to your questions. And I am known for saying I may not have all the answers, but I sure can find people on this campus, even if they're trying to hide from me. I have ways. And we want you to be more confident about your next step and to know that we're going to be there too. So for the next step, and if you haven't heard it in any of the other sessions, we serve you guys for life. We signed on when you signed on to come to UTC and to graduate from UTC, and we provide the exact same services to our alumni that we provide to students. So as a student today, whatever service is available to you will be available 5 days after you graduate. So you don't lose us. Now we're not going to stalk you. I always put that in there. But we'll be there if you need us. Okay, so the transferable skills. Now, some of them are soft skills. Some of them are more specific. These are the skills that you have maybe that you used in a classroom, that you used on a job. And when you're looking at your next step, it's how those skills would transfer over. For example, up on the screen, I've got hard skills. That could be computer skills, presentation skills, language skills, certifications that you got. Our exercise science folks, lots of times already have CPR and first aid certifications when they graduate. So the next step that you take, you kind of look at what you're carrying and you think, what do I have now that's going to be valuable to that employer or recruiter? So it could be that now you have, maybe it's an elementary language skill of Spanish, but where you're going to apply could be a nonprofit organization that is trying to assist Hispanic people with understanding about COVID and the importance of being tested, or the importance of not being in large groups. I know that was initially an issue in Chattanooga when COVID first started rearing its ugly head. Okay, these are the things I see lots of times on resumes. Someone will put in a skill that dependability is a skill, that problem solving is a skill, adaptability, flexibility. You know what? I can throw those bullet points up on a resume, but if I don't have anything in my bullet points that demonstrates how I can do that, it's kind of like, did you just cut and paste that off of some LinkedIn somebody had? So that's why I want you to be able to know. And when you're looking at these right now, okay, what's one that jumps out at you that you would say, oh, I do have that? It's okay. I don't have everybody pulled up, so I could even have a voice coming from behind the curtain saying something, and I would be fine with that.
Dependability.
Dependability. Okay. So then when you're doing your bullet points, you could say that you were someone who worked every day during COVID, worked from home, managed to maintain your same level of standards, managed to increase if you increase something. Because one of the things that I'm telling folks now is make sure that in your bullet points, one of the first things you do is you talk about how you dealt with COVID. You guys all had to go from face-to-face to online learning. Well, guess what? There's a lot of companies that the employees are struggling with online communication. So you put that on your resume That could be something that somebody in an interview wants to talk to you about. What are some of the techniques that you used to enhance your online learning? What are some of the hurdles that you had to get across in order to do it? So the dependability could be that in spite of COVID, you maintained the standards of your learning, the standards of where you worked, and you were consistent with the provision of services. Doesn't that sound impressive? But it's true. My family was hit with the tornado in East Brainerd, and that was one of the things that we were bound and determined. We had a son in grad school. We had to find internet. Well, during COVID, we couldn't go sit at Panera and drink coffee all day and each of us work or study from Panera because Panera was shut down. And it was like, I can now tell you, I know how to scan resumes on my phone, which I did not know before, and critique them and send them back. And I know how to do mock interviews, and that's a whole nother conversation, but I will give you one tip. If you are conducting an interview with your phone, you may have to go to the restroom, but make sure you mute your phone before you walk into the restroom, because acoustics will tell on you. Just a tip you didn't even know you were going to get today. Okay, so what you do is you paint a picture. Now, I make a comment on here and I want you to see this, and then I'll go back to the previous page. The skills I listed could apply to a waiter, a waitress, a babysitter, a marketing person, a mechanical engineer, or a nurse. There they are. Communication, dependability, teamwork, organization, problem solving, adaptability, flexibility, conflict resolution, and creativity. Each of those positions would use each of those soft skills. So that's why in your bullet points, you are painting the picture for them so they can see conflict resolution. You know, what kind of conflict did you have with whatever the position was? Now, you don't want to get into such specifics that you're giving them details of how you did it. You want to give the general picture of this was a conflict and I resolved it through communication, through teamwork, things like that. Okay, now guys, stop me as I go if you have questions, because this was one of those things where I did not do a lot of PowerPoint slides because everybody has their own question of, I did this, how would this transfer? So what I did put on here for you was an application challenge of how you could see that you are learning this and incorporating it. Think about a volunteer or a paid work experience and 5 soft or transferable skills that you have and how you would paint that picture. Now, we're great to talk about it here. You can email it to me if you're not one of those people who wants to do a lot of talking out loud. Some of the resumes I see involve students who have worked in food service. So if you think about that and you think about these soft skills, well, communication could be receiving the order. It could be verifying a reservation. It could also be tied in with conflict resolution, finding out that someone has dietary issues. And then problem solving is resolving those issues. So even in an interview, someone could say to you, tell me about a time when you had to do conflict resolution followed by problem solving in order to provide the best customer service. Well, there's your example right there. Creativity could be being able to think about how to do things when resources don't work. Every time I do a PowerPoint presentation, I print off the pages, because if technology is going to have a bad day, it's usually going to have a bad day on my head. And I have learned that it's best to be prepared. That may not be something that you have to do. I call that being creative. I call that being organized, adaptable, flexible. I could call it every one of those things, but I might have to explain how I did. Okay, so back over here, I'm going to talk about the related mind the gap sessions, and then we're just going to talk about your transferable skills and which ones would you have a difficult time putting on a resume. So today, as far as related mind the gap sessions, even if these have already passed, you could still go, because we are recording these, and by next week you'll be able to go in and listen to all the recordings. We have to get them transferred over. And fortunately, I'm not the one doing that. So it'll probably be done by next week. If it was me, I'd be saying, check with us after you graduate. Not my strength. So we'll have analyzing personal strengths and weaknesses. We'll have establishing a professional identity, navigating a workplace culture. It's not always easy. Sometimes there are landmines, and understanding the path from entry-level work to the dream job. So those are the related sessions. Everything pretty much relates. We tried very hard to make sure that we were going to be kind of repeating some of the same stuff. So as far as who's got I did this as a job, how would I transfer this over to a resume or to an interview? Who's got one of those? And you're going to have to unmute if you want to talk to me, anybody. Or you could just look at me and we'll smile for a while until you decide you'd rather get ready for the next session.
Does Excel count as a transferable skill?
Excel counts as one of those hard skills. You can do a section just that says skills and you can just put Excel. That's also, a lot of folks don't put in Microsoft Office because they think everyone knows how to do it. But if you look in job positions, you'll find that they even specifically say that they want someone to have experience in Microsoft Office. So if you see that on a position, make sure that's on your resume. So good question, James.
Would you suggest, like on our actual resume, putting down these examples, or would you just suggest having those kind of like on hand for like an interview?
I think you can do both. And lots of times we have had employers to tell us that, and I may have skipped over that slide, guys. If I did, I'm sorry. But we have had employers to tell us that the soft skills, I read it. The soft skills could actually determine who does get hired and who doesn't. It could also determine who gets kept on a job if they're having to do layoffs, because they want to know that you can think outside the box. That's the creativity. They want to know that you can be flexible, especially in a time like this. My husband was sent home March 19th to work from home, and he's still working from home. If he had not been able to adapt and to be flexible with what he was doing, if he was like, no, I can only work if I'm in my office at the office, he would have had a hard time. We have a nephew who works for Blue Cross Blue Shield. He's been working from home since March. If we could not adapt our jobs to do them in a different circumstance, then the company would be saying, we need someone who can. So nothing wrong with putting on there that those are skills, but make sure in the bullet points you're showing people how you do that. You don't have to specifically say, I am dependable and I show up at work every day. But you can say, maintained consistent professional standards for providing services. Same thing, but you just said it in a different way. Okay, so someone wanted to know about classes that help you master Excel and Word. The library does have them, and they put them out from time to time what their schedule's going to be. If you haven't seen one for this semester, then check on their website. Also, too, you can Google Excel, and it's always got lots of different things that you can do. So we have the question, many recruiters don't like a lot of words on the resume. How can I be concise in describing these soft skills? The recruiters don't want to see fluff. That's a very good question. You don't need to put adjectives. You don't need to say, but if you say in your skills listing, attention to detail, and then you've got several typos on your resume, you just crossed yourself off. And as far as the Excel and the Microsoft classes, workshops, through the library, I know they're free. And I would say, again, just to go to the library website. Recruiters want to know that you looked at their job position. They want to know that you're addressing the required qualifications and the preferred qualifications. So when you're looking at those, you might see something that they say they want to see leadership. And if you were an athlete, then you've got automatically, it's inferred teamwork. It's automatically inferred that you have leadership. But you could say that, say, if you were an athlete, you could say what you played, and you could say that you were on a team of X number of people with rotating leadership status, something like that. Then in an interview, they'll go more in depth and they'll ask you, tell me about how you saw your leadership skills. So that's how you can give a picture. It doesn't have to be the details of, there are sometimes when people see space showing up on a resume and they start putting anything in. I've had, you don't need to do your additional interests. I've had walking the dog on hikes. If you are an exercise science person, the fact that you hike is actually relevant. But telling someone that you are left-handed or right-handed is not as necessary on a resume. And there are lots of times what I find is somebody either doesn't know how to put everything on the page, or I'm critiquing a resume right now that's 6 pages long. That's not called a resume. And those last pages won't even get looked at because, again, they don't have the time. They spend 6 seconds going down a resume. They know the keywords they're looking for. And if you skip over, and by the way, the very first bullet point is usually the level of education. If you put your education all the way on the bottom of, say, page 4, they're not even going to get to see their number 1 criteria for hiring you. So you go to the job position, you see what's required, you see what's preferred, and they will tell you what they're going to be looking for in that resume. It does mean that one size does not fit all, guys. I hate to tell you that, but you can set up a file with all your experiences and then you can pull things forward. If you are ever looking at something and you say, this is very important, I want to tell people that I did this. I just did a nursing resume, and I will never give names of people. So you don't have to worry that if you send me a resume, I'm going to use you as an example. I may use your resume item as an example, but I will never give names. But I had a nurse who was also in a sorority, and nursing got 2 inches on the resume. Sorority got 7. If you're applying to work for the sorority and you want to show them what all you did, but also they needed someone who had medical background, that might work. But this person was applying to work in a hospital. The hospital is going to want to know more about the skills, the clinical skills, than it is the sorority skills. Not to say they're bad, but you have to, It's kind of like your customer comes in and says, I need to get a pair of comfortable shoes. I've got to make a presentation. And you go, we have these awesome stilettos. Aren't they pretty? They're pretty, but they're not going to work for standing up making a presentation. You got a communication issue there. So hard to put that you have communication skills when you missed them. Have you ever had an experience that you're like, how would I put this on a resume? Has anybody got one of those? While you're thinking, if there is a position and they want to know about a skill, maybe you don't have that skill, but you took that class, so you know what that word means. It's okay in the education section after you do your UTC, what your degree title is going to be and everything, to do something called relevant coursework. Relevant is a big word because that tells the recruiter, I actually sorted through these. So you wouldn't do your general biology, but you might do your higher level. And you can put relevant coursework, and all you do is run it across a line and you put the title of the class and you put a bullet point in between each one just to separate it, make it clean, because some of those classes, I think the professors get paid by how long the title is. I've accused some of my friends who are professors of that. It's like, did y'all have a contest to see who could come up with the longest title? And they looked at me and go, why do you want to know? And I'm like, you just told me. So when you're looking at this and you say, okay, I don't have a lot of skill with that, but I took a course in it. That tells them you're not going to have to define everything for me. But every job has a learning curve. You don't have to be an expert in the beginning because you still have to learn the company. Transferable skills. What do you think about them? You going to include them? You going to leave them off? What? You're going to think about them. I can tell. If you run into something and you've got an experience and you're like, I want to put this on, but I don't know how to put this on, you can email me. My email is donna-cooper@utc.edu. And you can just say, hey, I'm working on my resume and I did this. They want to know such and such. How can I put it? It's like two languages. You're speaking in one language, the job position, the employer speaks in another, and you're coming together in a way that you get to share about you and they get to learn about you. And it's a neat process, but it is scary until you get more used to doing it. And it's uncomfortable. Also, like I said yesterday in my presentation, it's kind of like your firstborn child. You've worked so hard on it and all your hopes and expectations are on that one thing, and somebody looks at it and goes, you left off your phone number. We had a student who turned in a resume and left off their name. Fortunately, the email address was the UTC one, so I could get in touch with them and say, could you tell me the name that needs to go on this resume? So, we work with whatever we can to help you guys. Transferable skills are great. It says, I've already got something I can bring to your company. You just want to be sure that, number one, they're looking for it. The job position will tell you. And that number two, if asked about it, you know how to elaborate. That's the biggest thing, because we do want your cover letter, we do want your resume to get you the ticket called an interview. Sometimes you know someone, you've already got the job, but you still have to do the paperwork for HR, and you still want it to look good. So every experience that you have has taught you something. Some things you would put on a resume, some things you wouldn't. But in an interview, a question could come up and say, what is your definition of resilience? My definition of resilience is being able to transfer learning face-to-face to learning online with 2 weeks notice, and to complete a semester and to come back for the next semester with a lot of unknowns. Being willing to be adaptable, flexible. That's more what you'd say in an interview, not what you'd say on a resume. But that's how, if somebody said resilience, I don't think we always take a step back and look at what we're doing and go, you know what? Somebody passed me downstairs in the University Center yesterday and said, how are you doing? And I said, I am upright. I'm standing on my feet. I'm not in a sick bed somewhere. You know, the day is good. I'm upright. And that's a pretty big goal. There are people that are trying very hard to be there. So it's all in how you look at it. And guys, remember, you've got us even after you graduate. We're glad to help. You can send your questions or your resumes even. You can email them to me. I'm usually the one who winds up critiquing anyway. You could send it to the Career Center's site, Center for Career and Leadership Development, but I'm going to go in and check the emails every morning and forward it to me anyway. So whatever works, we'll get it done. And if you have something going on and someone has said, send me a resume and you're doing it for a particular job position, it's always good if you let us see that, because then I'll go through and I'll actually put it side by side with your resume and say, this works, this doesn't. So anyway, well, it's nice to meet you again, see you again, and you guys enjoy the rest of your sessions. And I hope I hear more from you. Take care.